The Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars took place from 1803 to 1815, following the aftermath of the French Revolution. They were sparked when revolutionary France, ruled by Napoleon Bonaparte, came into conflict with major European powers, such as Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. These states feared the spread of revolutionary ideas and France's growing military dominance. What began as ideological and defensive wars quickly turned into continent-wide conflicts for power and survival. During the wars, Europe experienced mass conscription, total warfare, civilian suffering, and large-scale occupation unlike anything seen before. Armies lived off the land, cities were besieged, civilians were punished for resistance, and prisoners of war were often mistreated. The sheer scale of destruction exposed the lack of clear rules governing how wars should be fought and how civilians and captured soldiers should be treated. Although no single comprehensive treaty was created immediately after the wars, their brutality directly influenced the development of modern international humanitarian law. The Napoleonic Wars helped shape principles later formalized in the Hague Conventions and Geneva Conventions, including protections for civilians, humane treatment of prisoners of war, limits on unnecessary destruction, and the idea that war itself should have legal boundaries. In this way, the wars laid the foundation for the modern laws of war. The Crimean War. The Crimean War took place from 1853 to 1856 and was one of the first modern industrial wars. It began primarily over disputes about who would protect Christian minorities in the weakening Ottoman Empire. Russia, claiming to defend Orthodox Christians, pressured the Ottomans for special privileges. When the Ottomans refused, Russia occupied the Danubian principalities, modern-day Romania. In response, the Ottoman Empire, backed by Britain and France, declared war on Russia to stop Russian expansion and preserve the balance of power in Europe. The main goal of Russia was to expand its influence toward the Mediterranean and gain control over strategic sea routes. Britain and France aimed to contain Russian power and protect Ottoman territory. The war is best remembered for brutal battles such as the Siege of Sevastopol, where poor planning, disease, and inadequate medical care killed more soldiers than combat itself. The suffering shocked the public, especially after war correspondents reported horrific conditions in military hospitals. Florence Nightingale's reforms drastically improved sanitation and survival rates, proving that humanitarian care could save lives in war. These horrors directly inspired Henri Dunant and led to the creation of the International Committee of the Red Cross and the First Geneva Convention, 1864. This convention established protections for wounded soldiers, medical staff, and hospitals, permanently changing international humanitarian law. The American Civil War. The American Civil War took place from 1861 to 1865 and was fought between the United States, the Union, and 11 southern states that seceded to form the Confederate States of America. The immediate trigger was the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, which Southern leaders feared would lead to the end of slavery. The war officially began on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. The core cause of the war was slavery, though it was framed politically as a dispute over states' rights and federal authority. The Union's initial goal was to preserve the United States, while the Confederacy fought to remain independent and protect its slave-based economy. As the war progressed, especially after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, ending slavery became a central Union objective. The brutality of the war, mass civilian suffering, prisoner abuse, scorched earth tactics, and total warfare forced legal innovation. In 1863, the Union adopted the Lieber Code, the first modern written set of laws governing warfare. It defined rules for the treatment of civilians, prisoners of war, occupied territories, and prohibited unnecessary cruelty. The Lieber Code directly influenced international humanitarian law, shaping the Hague Conventions and the Geneva Conventions, which still govern warfare and war crimes today.
World War I. World War I began on the 28th July, 1914, and ended on 11th November, 1918, becoming the first truly global and industrialized war in human history. The immediate trigger was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on the 28th of June, 1914, in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and declared war. Because Europe was locked into rigid military alliances, the conflict rapidly expanded. Germany backed Austria-Hungary, while Russia supported Serbia. France and Britain joined after Germany invaded Belgium, turning a regional crisis into a world war. While no single nation wanted a world war, militarism, nationalism, imperial rivalry, and alliance politics made escalation almost inevitable. The main goal of the war differed by country, but generally involved expanding power, defending empires, and securing national survival. Germany sought greater global influence. Britain and France aimed to contain German expansion, and Russia wanted to protect Slavic nations. Over time, the war shifted from quick victory plans to a brutal war of attrition, especially on the Western Front. During the war, unprecedented horrors shocked the world. Trench warfare caused mass casualties with little territorial gain. Chemical weapons like chlorine and mustard gas inflicted horrific injuries. Submarine warfare targeted civilian shipping, and aerial bombing introduced civilians as direct targets. Millions of soldiers became prisoners of war under often inhumane conditions. These realities forced major changes in international law after the war. In response to chemical warfare, the 1925 Geneva Protocol banned the use of chemical and biological weapons. The treatment of prisoners and civilians influenced updates to the Geneva Conventions, strengthening protections for wounded soldiers and POWs. The war also led to the creation of the League of Nations, the first global organization aimed at preventing future wars through diplomacy. World War I proved that modern warfare required global rules, and that international law would henceforth be written in blood. World War II. World War II occurred between 1939 and 1945, and was the deadliest conflict in human history, involving most of the world's nations. The war officially began on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. This aggressive expansion prompted Britain and France to declare war on Germany. The war was primarily driven by Germany, Italy, and Japan, the Axis powers, who sought territorial expansion, economic dominance, and the establishment of authoritarian regimes. Hitler's goal, in particular, was to create a greater German empire, achieve racial supremacy, and dominate Europe. The conflict saw unprecedented destruction and atrocities, including the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews and millions of others were systematically murdered. Cities across Europe and Asia were bombed, civilian populations suffered mass casualties, and new weapons, including nuclear bombs, were used. These events shocked the world and highlighted the urgent need for international legal protections to prevent such crimes in the future. As a result, World War II directly influenced the creation of key international laws. The Nuremberg trials of 1945 to 1946 established that individuals, including heads of state, could be held accountable for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. This was a historic shift from punishing only states to holding leaders personally responsible. Additionally, the war led to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which expanded protections for civilians and prisoners of war, and the Genocide Convention of 1948, defining genocide as an international crime. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, also emerged, promoting fundamental human rights worldwide. In essence, the devastation and atrocities of World War II reshaped global law and norms, creating legal mechanisms to hold individuals accountable, protect civilians, and prevent systematic human rights abuses, laying the foundation for modern international humanitarian law.
The Vietnam War. The Vietnam War took place from 1955 to 1975 and was rooted in the Cold War struggle between communism and anti-communism. After France was defeated in Indochina in 1954, the Geneva Accords temporarily divided Vietnam into Communist North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, and anti-communist South Vietnam, backed mainly by the United States. The war escalated when the US intervened to prevent the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, while North Vietnam and the Viet Cong aimed to reunify the country under communist rule. The goal of the United States and South Vietnam was to contain communism and preserve an independent South Vietnam. The goal of North Vietnam was national reunification. The war became extremely brutal, involving guerrilla warfare, heavy bombing, and widespread civilian suffering. During the war, the use of napalm, Agent Orange, mass bombings, and atrocities like the My Lai massacre shocked the world. Media coverage exposed the human cost of modern warfare, especially to civilians. As a result, the war influenced major changes in international law, including stronger protections for civilians in internal conflicts, under the 1977 Additional Protocols to the Geneva Conventions, restrictions on chemical and environmental warfare, and later treaties such as the Environmental Modification Convention, 1977, and the Chemical Weapons Convention. The Vietnam War reinforced the idea that even powerful states are legally accountable for how wars are fought.